There's always a reason. But when I came to the shul 30 years ago, that was the minhag. So
It still is.
it still is. It's a minhag in Shari Chesed too. I think that's what it is. This shul is attached to Shari Chesed, whether you like it or not. And therefore, many of the minhagim of the shul follow the minhagim of the Beit Knesset Agra. And in Beit Knesset Agra, they light the candles, the Hanukkah candles, before Aleinu on Mincha. So that's what we do too. You have to like the fact that you're unique. Erev Tov, Chanukah Sameach. We saw in last week's parsha that Yosef is sold into slavery because of an accidental meeting that he has with an unknown person. Somebody found him, he gave him directions. The person, who was the person we discussed, Rashi and the Ramban, with a malach or not a malach. But the lesson is clear that the hashgacha elyonah, the will of heaven, is exercised in ways that are not predictable to us. So here he meets a man and he ends up being sold as a slave. In last week's parsha, so we also read that he is sold as a slave to Potiphar, and Potiphar's wife has him placed in prison. And then we meet another accidental person, Sarah Mashkin. Sarah Mashkin, according to Rashi and the Medrash, is placed in prison because there was a fly in the ointment. And the cup that he gave to the king, didn't meet the king's approval, Paro's approval. So Paro put him in jail. And Sarah Ophim also didn't meet with the approval of Paro, and Paro killed him. He executed it. So there's an interesting insight that all of this was to teach Yosef a lesson. The Hashgacha here is dealing with him. Yosef is cut out to be the Mashbir. He's going to be the one that saves everyone. He's going to be raised to greatness. His dreams are about to be accomplished. But the Sarah Mashkin, who was he? And how does it happen that he should give a bad cup of wine to the king? And how does it happen that he should have a dream and he should tell the dream to Yosef, and Yosef should interpret the dream and the interpretation should come true? So you have a series of very, very unlikely events that happen seemingly at random. One of the interesting points that I saw, I forget who I saw it from, it was a number of years ago, was that this is part of the education of Yosef. Yosef is going to become the Mishnah Lamelech to Paro, who Moshel B'chol Eretz Mitzrayim. Now, if Paro is willing to kill somebody because there was a fly on the cup, you can imagine what he's willing to do to one of his officers that somehow displeases him. And therefore, in it, there's a warning to Yosef. How careful one must be. And we see that later, that when Yosef wants to returned to Eretz Israel for the funeral and burial of Yaakov Avinu in the Maris HaMachpelah, he has to go through all sorts of intrigues in order to get Paro to agree to it. Can't just pick up and go. Because to be an assistant to Paro is dangerous. And that's true generally. People in power, if you're too close to them, you get burned as well. There's a man that's testifying in court now, going through all sorts of terrible hell for the simple fact that he was too close to power. It's really a Freudian slip. And Yosef asks the Sarah Mashkim, when the Sarah Mashkim is being released and is going to be restored to his task, to his position, he says, Kim Schartani, do me a favor. Put in a good word for me. And we all know that in governmental matters, you have to have somebody that puts in a good word for you. Otherwise, you get ground down by the system and the bureaucracy and everything else. And because of that, therefore, he said, Kim Schartani, remember me and take me out of here. I didn't do anything. I'm innocent. Mention me to Paro. That there is someone in prison who is innocent. It says that the Sarah Mashkim forgot him. I would imagine that in Paro's prison, there are a lot of innocent people. The nature of criminal justice is that there are innocent people that somehow are found guilty and pay a punishment, even though they are not guilty. Because human beings are capable of mistakes, capable of reading it wrong, or simply capable of evil. So Vishkocheu, he forgot him. Now, however, Paro has a bad dream, two bad dreams. Again, which I discussed with you yesterday. And Paro is very disturbed. So here's this character again, the Sarah Mashkim, who's an accidental character. He's somebody that should not be in the story. We would expect, we're talking here about the Shiftei Korah, the great tribes of Israel and Yaakov Avinu, etc. So what's this guy doing in the middle? Who's he? And again, as the Ramban points out, this is all how Hashgacha Elyona works. Somebody who is even unaware of the story that he's participating in. He doesn't know that he's bringing the tribes of Israel back together again. He doesn't know that the exile from Egypt is beginning. He doesn't know doesn't dawn on him the whole story. But he's ambitious. And he says to himself, the Medrash points it out, if I find the right person for Paro who will interpret the dream, then he'll give me a box of cigars. I'll have a benefit. So now all of a sudden he remembers. Chazal say, Arurim Arishoyim, Cursed be the evil people that even when they do you a favor, they do it in a half-hearted way. Yishom itonu nar, ivri, eved, But he can help you, Paro. He can discern dreams. And because he was able to discern dreams, and Paro is desperate, you have to realize how strange the story is. They take Yosef out of the pit, they dress him up and clean him up, and they bring him to Paro, and here the story takes on a different trajectory completely. And that's how Hashgacha Elyona works. Many times through people and characters that are unaware that they're being used, who don't know the great story. If the Sarah Mashkin would have known the great story, he wouldn't call him Nar, Ivri, Eved. But he doesn't know, he's just advancing his own cause. And through the behavior of human beings, the cause of their Ribono Shalom is advanced as well. Rabos machshavos belevish. People have their own thoughts, their own plans. They have it all figured out. But v'atzas Hashem hitakum. What is happening, that's the atzas Hashem. And most of the time we see that only in hindsight, and in retrospect, we're unaware of it when it is happening. So this is an idea that the Torah wanted us to have in mind, and that these parshas come to emphasize to us how the Hashgacha Elyona works in order to bring about the purpose that the Lord intended. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashi Omer Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakas Yisrael L'fichach Hirbo Lahem Torah Mitzvos Shenemar Adonai Chafetz Saman Tzidko Yagil Torah V'Yadir.